My name is Tony Crawford, and this Magna Carta loophole documentary recommends a Bank of Canada solution to twice-paid tax credit win bill conversions, how bank principals monetize tax scams for the rich. To Honourable John Oliver, thank you for reviewing my whistleblower affidavit that the Crown now questions the wisdom of trillion-dollar cost of money for billion-dollar tax credits hidden from the Treasury, not reported in the budget. As discussed, I still require a private member's bill that Gullible Taxpayer Law will resolve the twice-paid tax credit win bill issue, which is the Magna Carta loophole in the following case study of rent-seeking tax arbitrage.
Tax shelter, tax arbitrage comes in forms that are mind-numbingly complex.
Tax shelter TS007385 is a $5 million rent-encumbered mortgage on commercial real estate selling rent-loss tax credits as an investment that gullible taxpayers signed wind bill mortgage credit default swaps and blank demand notes subsequently rubber-stamped with a bank logo and filled out for an unnumbered bank loan that couldn't be sold or defraud without it. The bank denied the loan-dependent wind bill that a judge ruled for the bank to clear debt without trial and to dismiss counterclaims against the promoter collecting the mortgage credit default swap wind bill and cross-claims which were presented in another court that ordered the tax credit wind bill paid in cash twice over. Secret Commission pre-executed bank loan off-site loans closings started tax credit cash flow billed as mortgage partnership invoices that gullible taxpayer tax credit savers paid some 15 million LIBOR interest behind income tax revenue shortfalls not reported in the budget over the 10-year rent-encumbered mortgage term until rent withholdings triggered its failure and wind bill in default. Failure to renew the $5 million rent-encumbered mortgage triggered credit default swaps to collect tax-saver-signed wind bills, repaid once in default inside a $10 million REITs property flip the bank rebuilt for resale in capital markets, while collecting tax-saver-signed bank loan demand notes in default, as well as tax-saver-signed wind bills sued in dishonor for taxpayer acceptance to honor another $5 million payment in cash, which is the twice-paid tax credit wind bill conversion theory.
I have no doubt that there are tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars that should be collected by the world's fiscs that are not because of the kind of tax arbitrage activities that you describe.
Money changers charge rent-seeking bank interest on fictitious bill principal collected through retail and investment bank accounts until tax arbitrage rebills tax credit paper conversions for cash in central bank accounts hidden from the Treasury, not reported in the budget. A universal bank transaction control number and double entry accounting will check retail and investment bank tax credit transactions in central bank balances.
It will help our tax authorities enforce tax laws and combat tax evasion.
The other part of the challenge, which goes hand in hand with this whole banking fraud that's going on, is against the Minister of Finance and the budgetary process. Since 1215 in the Magna Carta, because only Parliament can impose taxes, Parliament will not impose taxes, cannot impose taxes before the government tells the House of Commons how it plans to spend that money in the next session. The speech from the throne is a constitutional requirement before the budget is actually passed. Problem with the budget in our country is there's a sleight of hand that goes on. To give you an example, they'll say, that our expenditure needs are $280 billion. We're going to have revenue of $240 billion. Therefore, we need to borrow $40 billion, and that's our deficit for the year. Well, that's not true. They collect or could collect a lot more than that, but then they transfer back to taxpayers. They transfer back money in tax credits. And then they say, we have $240 billion, we need to spend $280. If they could have an intelligent debate on whether or not they want to run a $40 billion deficit or shave the tax credits and run a balanced budget. And so that's a very nasty sleight of hand that's going on with our budgetary process, which we say is unconstitutional.
No one is underestimating Galati in his latest fight over the Bank of Canada's business. His cases can seem improbable.
In this case, what is your hope
What changes post the ruling that you're hoping for?
My hope is that the court declare that the government is bound by the legislation and cannot simply hand over that decision-making to foreign private bankers.
Parliament can be as nincompoop as they want, so long as they don't inflict constitutional violations.
It's very reassuring, thank you.
I know, but that's the law. However, that's not the case before you. The case before you is that there is an executive breach of a constitutional requirement by the Minister of Finance with respect to the budget process, and that as a result, the legislation that comes out of Parliament breaches the constitutional right to no taxation without representation. Why? The MPs are blindfolded. By removing and not revealing the true revenues to Parliament, which is the only body which can constitutionally impose tax and thus approve the proposed spending from the speech from the throne, the Minister of Finance is removing the elected MP's ability to properly review and debate the budget and pass its expenditure and corresponding taxing provisions through the elected representatives of the House of Commons. The right to vote includes the right to effective representation. If the MPs are blindfolded by executive constitutional breaches by the Minister of Finance, how does that ensure effective representation?
So, my submission to you is what could be more important to Parliament's functioning than the debate of the budget, process of the budget. And that's why in our Constitution, very clear in the Constitution Act 1867 that it must be in the House of Commons.
So in blunt terms, if you're telling me a Parliament wishes to act in an incompetent way, that's up to Parliament.
Well, Your Lordship is certainly using blunt words. It's not for me to say whether
I'm pitching it at a hypothetical.
Yes, exactly. That's right. I would prefer that. As an officer of the Crown, I would prefer that. Is the way our Constitution works is they make the laws. Once the laws are on the books, our judiciary scrutinizes them for conformity with the Constitution. But wisdom is not something that. Wisdom of legislation is not in the bailiwick of courts, as I understand it.
So if a bill comes before Parliament and the information is defective, I mean, there's not enough information there to make a meaningful decision, the remedy is what you're telling me is...
Well, I guess the remedy is this, is that we have elections every at least 5 years, the Constitution mandates. So the remedy would be is that people would vote in a party that would pass a different law.
So you're saying if Parliament wishes to pass legislation without having the full wherewithal, the full knowledge of what that legislation is all about, that's okay?
That's up to Parliament, because my next point is that Parliament is supreme in its deliberations.
It's true, but once again, your bottom line, I think, is you're telling me if you have a problem with what occurred here, your complaint should be to your representative and not to the court.
Yes, sir.
All
yes.
right.
Yeah. That's exactly it. Yeah. Yeah. That's my submission.
The systems that we're talking about are currently legal. We see that, though, the implications of these structures create an unequal playing field. So we don't think that they're fair. What we're trying to do is make sure that people that are getting their income through a typical salary that they might be earning are not in a situation that's worse off than someone that might be able to use a private corporation to sprinkle income among family members or to turn regular income into capital gains. So what we're really doing is closing down loopholes.
Neither the 2015 Magna Carta nor the 1882 Bills of Exchange Act defines law for bank control, and in 2016 the Federal Court of Canada ruled against trial of tax arbitrage that the government still issues tax credits to banks that profit from financial ruin and notional national debt. Canadian judges have questioned the wisdom of government banking and tax accounting and reporting in this Magna Carta loophole documentary made in September 2017 for my Member of Parliament John Oliver to present as public input to the 2017 budget process and private member's bill for Gullible Taxpayer Law to close the Magna Carta loophole that after 800 years of trust in no taxation without representation in principle, we need a bank system-wide transaction control number in case of debt that is contagion. My request for a public inquiry was back in 1993, and for a private member's bill in 2005, and now in 2017 in the detail that follows.